When you think of the CIA, what do you think of? It's usually driven by Hollywood. Our guest got married to a man who was persecuted for his religious beliefs in Egypt. She and her husband volunteered, agreed to work in the CIA, did 5 overseas tours, and she's here to talk about the realities of doing the job of CIA versus what Hollywood tells us it's all about. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. One of the questions I get all the time is, how can I show my support for law enforcement? We're all busy. We've got busy lives, but there's something oh so simple you can do with our Facebook page. Search for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. And when you see a post you agree with that resonates with you, share it, especially episodes of the podcast. To do all that, just search for us on Facebook, look for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and be sure to click like. Contact is from Florida. We have Michele Rigby Assad. Michele is a former CIA agent. Yep. The agency, the CIA, all those terms we hear about on television and movies, that she went there. She did the job for a long time, did 5 overseas tours. And she's here to talk about the realities of doing a job of CIA versus what Hollywood tells us. She's written the book, Get Off the X, CIA Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission. And her website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. That's 1 L, not 2. MicheleRigbyAssad.com. Michele, thanks for being a guest on the show. Very much appreciated.
So excited to be on your show.
It's a pleasure to have you here. And to be honest with you, the first time we talked, the reality that to be point blank honest with you, the reality is I thought of Homeland. I thought of all these shows we watch with the CIA and Carrie and all this other stuff. Like, oh, we got a real life Carrie coming on the show.
Well, for sure. I mean, Hollywood makes us look really glamorous. And, you know, for sure, it's an adventurous life, but it's very different than how it appears in Homeland. And yeah.
Isn't that really the case? They do that with police, by the way. And I'm not going to discolor your service, your story. We'll get into that. But one of the things is, like, sure, I love this show, Bosch. But they show the police living in the multi-million-dollar loft apartments, or they have a gorgeous view of Hollywood. They drive exotic sports cars. I'm thinking, man, where do they work? Because I could barely afford to eat ramen noodles.
All the best equipment, all the coolest gadgets, all the things that you never touched when you were actually in service.
Let me guess, you never got to do all that stuff?
Oh, my goodness. You know, I always they ask me, what was the coolest gadget you ever got issued by the CIA? And I said, I didn't. The coolest gadget is your brain.
Oh, man.
And how you work out problems. Like, that's the cool part.
When I was in the academy, a long time ago, the police academy, and one thing they kept drilling into you over and over and over again is the most important tool you own and you possess is available all the time is your brain. It's your mind.
Yeah.
You can talk yourself out of problems. You can talk yourself out of bad situations. For example, the moment you go to the gun, where do you back down from that? Where do you go to?
Yes, that's way too late. You know, people say, well, have you ever had your cover blown, or were you ever arrested? I'm like, boy, if you get to that point, it's really like the end of the world for an intel officer. You would never touch your weapon. You would never, because that's really, you're supposed to not be seen, and you're supposed to fly under the radar, and you don't want to be noticed. So it's like the total opposite of what people think.
And the reality is that most people, and I guess this is a form of some way of a question, most people that I know, they don't tell you they worked in CIA. The only people that tell you they worked in CIA, and this is present company excluded, are usually nut jobs.
It's true. If I had $1 for every person who told me they worked at the CIA or for special forces, and I found out or figured out very quickly they didn't. There are so many people who make this claim. Or they might have, worked in the CIA in administration or support, because of course we need a lot of staff to support our ops, but they just don't want you to know. They want you to think they're the Jason Bourne on the front lines when they did more of a supportive job, which of course is super important. But it's funny how people try to spin that.
So you're saying your experience was not like Jason Bourne. It was not like Mission Impossible.
Not at all. I think what's interesting is when you're preparing for an operation, you could prepare for days or weeks, or if it's something really, really high level, you could prepare for months. And then when you carry out that op, most operations, when you're meeting with your source to actually collect the intelligence you need from them, that might last you 3 hours, you out and back 3 hours. And then you spend another week writing up all your reports. And now that's the very not sexy part. But we always say in the CIA, if you don't write it up, it never happens.
Right.
So it's very important.
We had the same thing with police work. When I was detailed DEA, it was more writing than anything else. And research too. Like for us, especially, lots of research time. And I mean, if you haven't read that file forward to beginning to the end, then you're not prepared and you can't do your job. So there's a lot of memorization, just trying to remember so much material that you almost feel like your brain is short-circuiting a lot of the time, just the volume of stuff that you have to know in order to do your job well. So that's definitely not sexy, but I think the sexy part is once you've read 1,000 reports and you've carried out several operations, boy, when you've beat the streets of a Middle Eastern city and you've looked over your shoulder left and right, the kind of experience you have as a result of that is just incredible. I can only imagine, and we're going to get into some of that in a moment. Before we do that, I went to your website before the interview, MicheleRigbyAssad.com. That's with one L, not two. And I got to be totally honest with you. You don't fit the stereotype of what comes to my head of a CIA agent.
I hear that a lot. I am very smiley. I was like homecoming queen of my tiny little high school graduating class. I don't look like I'm going to be a super secret spy. And actually, that's been really helpful. People don't think I'm doing what I'm doing.
But here's what the irony of it, and this is really the ha-ha part of it, is, look, I am the stereotypical, I look like a cop. I walk like a cop. And I always tell people I'll be 85 years old pushing the walker down the hall where the old folks home. People go, shh, there's 5-0 right there. And that part I can't, if you turned into the dictionary and look for a picture of a cop, it should show me. You don't look like that. You look like the den mother from the Boy Scouts or the Cub Scouts.
Yeah, it's been very helpful, and there's been some operations where you've got to correct that misperception really quickly, or I can't do my job, because that terrorist just wants to flirt with me. And then there are other situations where I was potentially dealing with double agent, where I let them think that I couldn't possibly know very much, and I let that misconception be sustained in his mind. So it's a very interesting, you have to figure out how you come off to people, and then you got to work with that.
Is it safe to say that all of us, and I don't want to sound sexist when I say this, and for people to take that way, that's on you, that's not on me. But my wife, she's a former bartender, and she says I can focus on a man and know what his intentions and motives are the minute I lay eyes on him. I know how to act. Is that something that most people have to some degree or another?
No, they don't. And I think a lot of women do have that. And I think it's because physically we're the weaker sex, generally speaking. So we have to pay attention for our own safety, out on the street. So you kind of develop this sixth sense to be able to assess someone very, very quickly and their intentions towards you.
I think, I'm glad you said that. I think women are more in tune with, I always call it God-given or Mother Nature-given instincts.
Definitely.
If something makes the hairs on the back of your neck stand up, there's a good reason why. Don't ignore those things. They might just save your life. We're talking with Michele Rigby Assad. She's a former CIA agent. She's author of the book, Get Off the X, CIA Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your life's mission. And her website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. That's with one L. When we return, we'll find out how she got in the CIA, and we'll talk about some overseas tours of service. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. Have you heard of CreativeCon 2025? You should check it out. The website is CRE8TIVE.com. It's going on at the Intercontinental Hotel in Chicago, February 21st to 23rd. You get to meet great people like myself, John J. Wiley, host of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, and so much more. That's CreativeCon 2025, where you'll learn how to take your business, no matter what you do. If you're an entrepreneur, business leader, author, podcaster, or online professional of any type, take your business to the next level. Get more details online at CRE8TIVE.com. Again, that's CRE8TIVE.com.
Imagine earning an extra $500 to $5,000 a month or more from the comfort of your home or business, all with Facebook. That's right. Meta is paying people just like you every month. Learn how to create another revenue stream from Meta and dramatically increase your reach, all without breaking your own time bank. Sign up for a free membership at letbreak.com. letbreak.com. That's letbreak.com.
Return our conversation with Michele Rigby Assad. She is a former CIA agent. She's author of the book Get Off the X, CIA Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission. Her website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. It's with one L, MicheleRigbyAssad.com. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Michele, you weren't born a CIA agent. Is it safe to say that nothing in your early days in elementary school or high school prepped you for this?
Not at all. I didn't even know anything about the world. My parents weren't even political. Like, there was nothing that prepared me for this crazy life I've lived.
You grew up in a small Florida town.
Yeah, I did. And, my parents didn't know much about the world, so it wasn't like they could, prep me or prepare me for life even in a big town. So when I first went to Washington, D.C., I was in major culture shock. So different from being in the South to being up in the nation's capital. If anybody's been there, you know what I'm talking about. So, nothing prepped me for this at all.
So what prompted you to get into the CIA? Because how do you go from being a small-town Florida girl to undercover CIA operative agent working overseas?
Yeah, it's so funny because people think there was some strategic effort on my part. It is really so simple. I really just needed a job, and I was at Georgetown University.
You needed a job, so I'll apply there. If they hire me, I'm going.
Yeah, so I was working on my master's degree and on a topic that no one cared about at that. This was in the year 2000. Contemporary Arab studies at Georgetown, and that meant nothing to nobody, pre 9/11. And so as I was finishing up my degree, the CIA had a recruitment initiative at Georgetown, and so they're like, come and learn about what it's like to be an undercover CIA operative. So I went, thinking there's no way, I'm just curious. I want to hear what they have to say, but there's no way that I'm CIA material. But after that, I just, threw my resume into that box, because back then it was all physical resumes and piles. And, but I also put my resume in 200 other boxes. And this will make you laugh. I literally got no other offers. Nothing. The only response I got was from the CIA.
Well, first of all, I hate to say this. Having a master's degree in contemporary Arab studies, whatever it was, really is not in high demand.
Definitely. At that time, it was such a niche thing. So, it didn't mean much to many people.
Well, the part
in fact, my family was like, how are you going to get a job with that kind of a degree?
We'll get into what possessed you to do that in a moment. But a lot of DEA people, as a matter of fact, detailed DEA, the agent who supervised me, she came right from college. She got recruited in college to the DEA. A lot of FBI, a lot of the I call them the alphabet federal agencies, they recruit right from college. They get a lot of law enforcement people, a lot of people with military experience as well. Yes. But yours is not uncommon. What is uncommon is I had this mindset of it was this big strategic missionary thing. I'm going to do this.
Nope. In fact, when I got the first phone call from a CIA recruiter, I mean, you think it's a joke. You don't even know if it's like a legit phone call. And you're like, do you have the right person? Really? You're calling me? So I was a little confused at first, but I thought, well, you know what? Why not see where this takes me? Because the process is so long, so difficult, so many levels, and you just think there's no way I'll get through it. But hey, you know what? I'll give it a try.
Let's go into...
Nobody was more surprised than me when it went through.
Without getting into the secrets, and I love saying that with you, the secrets. Without getting the secrets, your training. We see certain things on television, and everybody in the CIA is a great fighter. Everybody in the CIA is really proficient in handguns. They're really good. My wife and I are watching a show called Black Doves, and it's in England now with Keira Knightley. And man, this woman can fight. And I'm thinking, you get hit like that one time, you're done. It's over.
No, right?
And we watch these shows. Your training is all this hand-to-hand and really spiritual stuff. Was that like that for you?
No, not at all. So the tradecraft training we get is such a psychological type training, because they're basically teaching you how to go to another country, break the laws of another country, run secret operations under their noses, handle dangerous assets, and be able to collect the intel that our government needs. Like, that's a crazy thing to prepare people for. And like we said earlier, if you even touch a gun, it's already too late. So all the tradecraft training they give you is, how to think, how to problem solve, how to run a surveillance detection route to make sure you're not being followed. So whenever you go to your secret meeting, they don't see you meeting with your secret source. So it's a bunch of, there's like the psychology of espionage, helping us to understand why even someone would be recruited and how do you recruit them? What is that process like? So it's a very intense, mental training. And then at the very end, if you do all that and you get through it and you're not cold in the process, then we have a month worth of physical training. So it's, being qualified on a Glock or an M4, stuff like that. But it's a whole lot less of that than you think. That's just kind of the icing on the cake at the very end of training.
And this is a fast forward to where you're at today. You're retired. You left the CIA. Do you ever look at the grocery store and go, man, if you only knew? Yeah, it's such a different world when you live in really dangerous places for 10 years, and then you come home and the hardest thing you have to do is pick which cereal out of the 50 cereals in the cereal aisle. It's just it's almost a little bit mind numbing sometimes. So you're I sometimes feel like my wife and I have this standing joke that we laugh about quite often. And you can tell with me and her too, my daughters have gotten that way as well, is that I'm not the one. If you want to have a bad day and you're looking for someone to pick on, I'm not the one. Do you ever think, man, I'm not the one you want to have this confrontation with?
Oh my gosh, you have no idea how many times I'm like, oh, really? You want to go there? It's funny because this is a funny story in my book, Breaking Cover, my first book, was preparing to be sent to the war zone, to Baghdad, because there's this big this rush to send more officers to the war zone. And I had flown back. My tour where I was serving was cut short after 10 months. Flew back to D.C., had to get the Glock training again. And the woman processing our paperwork, the administrative person, said, I cannot help you today because I had a bad day. And then she explained how it was very difficult to drive into the office. And I was like, you've had a bad day?
Yeah.
Let me tell you what a bad day is. And then I let her rip. And everybody in the office was literally frozen listening to this conversation. I was like, you don't know what a bad day is.
And in your way, you're right.
It puts life into perspective.
We're going to talk with Michele Rigby Assad. And for those who have just tuned in, Michele is a former CIA agent. She's author of the book, Get Off the X, CIA secrets. I love that word for her conversation. CIA secrets for conquering obstacles and achieving your life's mission. It's about mindset. And her website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. When we return to the show, there's some things on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio show, some things that occurred in your marriage and overseas that we want to talk about. Don't go anywhere. So much heading away. I promise you, we'll be right back. Here's your chance to get into the ground floor, to make a donation to make the movie Gun Runner, based off of the true story of now retired police detective Maria Oliveira, who shot 6 times while investigating a crime, died 3 times, brought back to life, has been in a hospital for a month, rushed back to work, only to suffer a near-fatal heart attack, and then several months later, a near-fatal stroke. It talks about his recovery, his life after, and more. That's at gunrunnerfilm.com. Again, you can make a donation at gunrunnerfilm.com.
Learn how you can be ultra successful on Facebook and possibly earn an income from Meta. Learn how to work smarter and not harder on Facebook. Get step-by-step instructions on what to do and what not to do. Start with a free membership. Get details at letbreak.com, letbreak.com. That's letbreak.com.
Return conversation with Michele Rigby Assad on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio show. Michele is a former CIA agent. She's author of the book, Get Off the X, CIA Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission. Her website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. That's Michele with 1 L. Michele, thanks for talking about this. And I'm not going to ask you if you get super secret clearance to tell people like me in the radio about your CIA experience, because I'm sure there's certain things you can't talk about. And that was very much tongue-in-cheek. That was very much tongue-in-cheek.
Well, it's amazing what they actually let you tell. I mean, I've got now 2 books full of cleared material. So
that's the funny thing.
Cool.
See, this isn't your first book. This is your second.
Yeah, and they really do let you talk about a lot of stuff. And I share a lot of crazy stories about that experience because there's a lot of material.
Well, one of the things you said in the interview program, the radio show, was that you got married to a man that was persecuted for his religious beliefs in Egypt. Can you tell us about that and how that motivated you to get into CIA?
Yeah, so it was really cool, the idea of getting into the CIA at the same time as your husband. And what was so cool about that was Joseph grew up in Egypt, and he comes from a part of Egypt that the roots of Al-Qaeda come from. And in fact, he was a persecuted Christian. So his dad was a pastor. His parents had a ministry in Egypt. And I mean, they grew up with all kinds of horrible experiences. But he eventually got kicked out of university and had to come to the United States to get his education. So for him to be able to become an American citizen, like the proudest American you've ever met, and then to be able to serve his new country as a counterterrorism officer, I mean, and then to be able to do that as a couple together, he understood after 9/11, he understood way before 9/11, the threat of terrorism originating in the Arab world because he lived next to it. Like literally, it's crazy. He went to school with kids whose parents were terror cell leaders in Egyptian Islamic Jihad. So, and then the mosque right next to the orphanage where they lived, the mosque was the Blind Sheikh's mosque, who was responsible for the first World Trade Center attack. Mm-hmm. So he knew that the terrorism ideology, and of course he had native level Arabic, which of course served him extremely well, and just complete and full knowledge of where these people were coming from and how to deal with them.
And we used to see it a lot in the news. I don't see too much of it anymore. I don't know if it's not happening as frequently, but the religious persecution against what the term they used was Coptic Christians, I believe, in the Middle East still continues.
Absolutely. And, unfortunately, the Middle East has been emptied of so many Christians. All these countries had, bigger populations of Christians. And over time, it's just dwindled and dwindled as they try to find, a better, more welcoming country to live in. It's a really tough life to be, not just a second-class citizen, but really lower than that and not to have the same rights as other people. Joseph is so proud to be an American and is so grateful. And he understands what it is to not have freedom. So then when you have freedom, boy, he just was so happy to stand up for it and support it.
It brings back memories of my grandfather and grandmother. They immigrated from Ireland, and one of the proudest moments of their life was when they became American citizens.
Oh, yeah.
And it's not saying that where they came from was bad. It was not bad. It's just, it was a different time. But it was the goal for them was different than people, I think, who are born here and take that for granted.
Yes, absolutely true. And once you've served abroad and you've seen what it's like in other countries, you have such appreciation for what we have here in this country because you've seen what it looks like when you don't have those freedoms.
So you did a bunch of tours overseas. Can you say what countries you were in?
So the CIA only allows me to specify one of them. Okay. And I'm allowed to say that I served in Iraq, in Baghdad for a year. So that was 2006 to 2007. It's likely a lot of your listeners are familiar. That was like one of the worst times in Iraq, and probably a lot of your listeners served there as well during the surge.
And some of the ones I talked to that served there, it was a real culture shock for them, the way that people lived, and especially when dealing with children. Did you encounter that?
Yeah, I had already done so much travel to the Middle East, so that didn't shock me so much. I think the hardest part for me, because I was really prepared culturally for that experience, was the difficulty and the trauma of living in a war zone. Those are the things that we Americans are unfamiliar with, generally speaking. And, a car bomb going off every morning, and then rockets being shot at our compound every afternoon, and running into the bunker to try to stay safe. And then the heaviness of dealing with sectarian murders and ethnic cleansing and more car bombs and all of the intelligence we're gathering to just try to stop the next attack from happening. It was such a really heavy lifestyle. Long days, long hours, no holidays. I mean, I know you talk a lot about this on your channel, but on your talk show. But the trauma involved in that experience, it's pretty heavy. It's a lot to bear. I
can only imagine, and we'll talk about some of this. I can't help but think, number one, policing in Baltimore, when people tell me, oh, this is a bad neighborhood I'll use, for example, Delray Beach, Florida, I'm like, that's nothing compared to where I worked. Trust me on that one.
Yeah.
And we can't compare the two. But even that, I can't really wrap my head around living in a war zone, growing up in an area. My wife and I talk about this almost every day. The people in different parts of the world, Central America, South America, they always get jacked up by these dictators. Like, how's that even possible? How stuff we take for granted, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't imagine that being your whole life. But no, it was the cumulative stress was pretty intense, and we also lived in places which I can't mention the locations. There was one place, it was our first tour, it was 2 years, and it was one of the kidnapping and carjacking capitals of the world. And we didn't live on a compound. So at least in Baghdad, we were in the green zone, so there was this element of safety because we weren't going off of the compound very much like our brothers and sisters in the military were every day. But in this other country, every day you left the house, every day you left your place of work, you're actively looking for hostile surveillance. Like, this is your lifestyle. This is what you do for 2 years of your life, having to always be on and aware of your surroundings.
And when you come home,
tough.
Where's the off switch to get rid of hypervigilance?
Oh, dude, that's a very hard switch to find. You come back for your R&R, and it's just like you don't even know what to do with yourself. Life is so normal and so easy when you get back to the States or you go to Europe, and you're like, it's hard.
That's the part where we went back early in the conversation where you're at the grocery store and you're thinking, man, if you only knew. And I sometimes, to be totally honest with Michelle, I look at people and go, and I'm as guilty of this as the day is long. That, what do you know about what I've been through? And I can tell that immediately by looking at people, and they could have gone through worse than me. I just don't know.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, as hard as it was, doing what we did, I wasn't on the streets of Baghdad like our brothers and sisters in the military were. Like, I can't even imagine rolling off a compound every day, knowing it could be your last day,
right,
or you might not have your limbs when you return. So it was hard on me, but you almost feel guilty saying that because you're like, well, we still had it way better and easier than they did, you know?
Yeah. Thank goodness. And that's a sacrifice that a lot of us really can't comprehend. We're talking with Michele Rigby Assad. She is a former CIA agent, author of 2 books. The one that we're talking about, the most recent, is Get Off the X, CIA Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission. Her website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. That's with 1 L. When we return to our conversation with Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we're going to talk about life after and what motivated her to write her books. There's so much heading your way. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back. You can find us on Facebook. Look for and like the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. What is the Newsbreak app, and why should you follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on the Newsbreak app? Newsbreak is your #1 local news app for current events, free live news for you and your community. Download the Newsbreak app today for free, and be sure to follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. Return our conversation with Michele Rigby Assad on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Michele is a former CIA agent. She's author of the book Get Off the X, CIA Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission. Her website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. Before that, Michele, you wrote another book. What's that called?
Breaking Cover, My Secret Life in the CIA and What It Taught Me About What's Worth Fighting For.
Dude, you are so fascinating. I swear, you really are. It's like, if you go to MicheleRigbyAssad.com, and I don't mean this in a negative way, Michele does not look like she sounds. You think, oh, this is someone that is at a grocery store that's got the book club. No, and no. That's not the reality of what it's. And here's a really fascinating part, Michele. Not only were you in the CIA, your husband was in the CIA, and you two have been married successfully for how long now?
Oh, gosh, almost 30 years.
That in itself is amazing.
Well, it is because, you know, when you live that crazy life, you know, when you have so much stress, of course that weighs on a marriage. There's no way it can't. I mean, but number one, I'm grateful he was right next to me. So we were isolated from the world, but at least we had each other.
Right.
But also, too, towards the end of that 10-year career, I mean, it was definitely hard on our relationship. And we knew at the end of that 10 years that, like, we'd missed out on so much in our family's lives. And what is the real world like? Like, we don't even know. We knew it was time to go.
And I sense that you both, I know you can't speak for him, but there is the reality of being married. I don't care what your occupation is, where you look at each other and go, you're still here? Oh, let's go. You never go. I can't go anywhere. I can't. And you ask me these stupid questions over and over and over again. But one thing that really helps me, and I love my wife, Stephanie, I call her the boss, tremendously. And I talk to her periodically about what I went through in police work. We don't talk about it a lot, but she doesn't ask me questions. And I would think that'd be a big advantage for you and your husband, because you both did that line of work, and you don't have to explain.
Oh, yeah. We were in the same office doing the same stuff. There were no secrets.
No, wait a minute. You're married and you're CIA and you're working in the same office.
Yeah, I mean, some people say, like, oh, there's no way I could do that with my spouse. And there's some couples that are like, no, absolutely not. But for us, it worked, and it worked really well. And maybe we have a problem too.
Maybe.
You think? Our problem is, like, what is our pillow talk? We're talking about terrorism in the Middle East. Like, this is how we talk every day.
Yeah. Well, I was going to say this, and here's what came to my mind. It's, and I'm very much male, and my wife is very much female. And there are times, to be totally honest with you, where you go, don't even think about it. Don't even touch me. And I would think, if you live together, you're married, you work together, you're in the CIA, and you've got to have those looks. You've got to have those thoughts.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you're like, we do everything together. Please go out with your buddies. Or I'll be like, no, go with your girlfriend. It's fine. So, yeah, we're pretty much still joined at the hip. But
now, you two are back in the United States. You've been out of the CIA for a while, and now you got a big role transition from literally life and death situations, really horrible situations, to, okay, now I'm going to go to the grocery store and get groceries. And the transitions, and you talked about this earlier, the transition to a relaxed, peaceful life has got to be tough. But if you're like me, it's something you want desperately.
Yeah, it's so funny. You desire that, you crave it, but at the same time, you are an adrenaline junkie, and then you don't know, what am I going to do with myself when I do finally get some peace? And we had colleagues who warned us when we were saying, it's time to leave, we're going to go. They said, you're just never going to feel this level of purpose or meaning ever again. Like, you cannot do anything on the outside of the CIA like you could do here. We're like saving lives every single day, especially in war zones. But then we found out that's not true, which is awesome. Another incredible part of the story. We were able, a couple years after retiring from CIA service, to take this unique set of skills that are so crazy, like dealing with difficult people, carrying out operations in really difficult places. And we were able to help a group of persecuted Christians from Iraq who were displaced by ISIS. And a group of people came together in 2015 and said, what can we do to help these people? And they needed somebody to operationalize this. Like, who are we going to work with? Where could we possibly take them? So here we are using this incredible set of skills, and we were able to find people to work with that needed real help, and conduct diplomacy with high-level government figures and find a country willing to take these people, and then arrange an airlift operation to make that happen. So that incredible post-CIA operation occurred in December 2015, and it was a life-changing operation for them and for us, to be able to use all the crazy skills that you learned working as an undercover officer in the service of people who really need your help. It was the most fulfilling thing we've probably ever done.
That's really amazing. And that is a lot. Number one, you covered a bunch of points there, but you're like, okay, now we got to find a country that's willing to take them. Good luck with that. Where do you start that off?
I mean, good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I said that like it's just another point, but that was during the summer of the Great Migration, where refugees were spilling into Europe from the sea, from land. Nobody needed to take more refugees. It was the worst possible time to do this. But it also shows that when it's meant to happen, when it is supposed to happen, it will happen. And it's just a miracle. The whole thing was a miracle. And that is really cool. That's the ending of my book, Breaking Cover. And it's almost like a made for video moment. Like,
right.
Yeah,
I would watch it, to be honest with you. I'd watch it. That sounds, I love happy endings. And I don't love the Hollywood. They sipped tea and had the house with a white picket fence and lived happily ever after and laughed and laughed and laughed. I'm sure it's not like that, but there's got to be a good spot somewhere at the end. Otherwise, I feel let down. Yes.
And when we were talking earlier, most of what we do is not Hollywood-like. This op was as if it was written by Hollywood. I swear, we're in the middle of it, and we're like, this. I actually thought, it feels like I'm in a movie right now. We had that thought, like, this cannot really be happening. So it was a really cool, and, these people's lives were changed. They got to, put down roots in a safe country. Now, life is hard when you do that. Like, you can't just uproot yourself from your country of birth and easily, just become a citizen of another place. It's a hard journey, but these people said, like, we're willing to do it for our kids. And
we are
it was nice to be a part of that.
Out of time. Yep. Can I ask you this? Is there anything you can't do?
Oh, there's a lot of stuff I can't do.
I somehow think that just looking at the title of your recent book, Get Off the X, CIA Secrets for Conquering Obstacles and Achieving Your Life's Mission, it's for me, it's focusing on what I can do something about and doing that.
Yes, it is. It's about, like, life is full of obstacles and complications. That's normal. But what I'm really trying to explain to people is how not to freeze. We freeze it out of fear, uncertainty, intimidation, and we don't push ourselves forward. We don't take risks. And so the whole purpose of this book is to help people who are in a season of transition, or they're stuck, or they feel like they need something more in their lives, is to provide both the inspiration and the methodology for them to get unstuck and move forward.
And your website is MicheleRigbyAssad.com. That's with one L. Can they get more information about all your books and contact you there?
Absolutely, yeah. There's a contact form there. There's a description of both books. Everything you need to know, it's all there.
And by the way, there's a lot of great photos of Michele in there as well. And when you go to her website, MicheleRigbyAssad.com, I challenge you, I double dog dare you to look at the photos and say, that is not the person I expected. Michele, thanks so much for your service, and really thank you for sharing about it on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Both very much appreciated.
Thank you so much.
I'd like to thank our guests for coming on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. The Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show is a nationally syndicated weekly radio show broadcast on numerous AM and FM radio stations across the country. We're always adding more affiliate stations. If you enjoyed the podcast version of the show, which is always free, please do me a favor and tell a friend or two or three. I'll be back in just a few days with another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.